Great. Okay, so hello everyone.
So many screens.
Thanks for coming. My name is Paul Craig, and today I'm here to talk to you about TaxGPT, which is about finding free filing for folks. And their website is taxgpt.ca, HTTPS, because we want to be secure. Agenda, I was going to fill that out, but there is none. But it's a civic tech group, so I was going to start very quickly. It's a simple React app. It uses Next.js, Typebot, Google Analytics. So Typebot is, probably no one's really heard of it. It's like you can create a little chat experience by sort of drag and drop text, and then depending on the answer, you can go to different flows. So that's really the heart of the experience in some ways. And then also ChatGPT. So that's probably the part that most people are curious about. What is ChatGPT? So for anyone who hasn't heard of it, TaxGPT, I'm just kidding. Everyone has heard of ChatGPT. It's like the most famous thing in the world right now. So obviously you've already heard of ChatGPT. So I asked ChatGPT to write a description of itself. Also kidding. This is so played out, like everyone does it. I just used my human mind to write down this slide. So ChatGPT is a large language model. It sucks up data like a vacuum. It learns essentially like how is language structured, what words come after what other words, what ideas are related, and then it listens for user input and returns responses that it thinks are right. So it's predictive text. Basically, if it reads all of Wikipedia and then you ask it 1, 2, 3, what comes next, it will probably be able to say the next number is 4. And in my testing, it knows that. It can also give you reasonable answers on things that are pretty well documented. So 1, 2, 3, 4 is pretty easy. Why did Napoleon lose the Battle of Waterloo? There's 5 reasons. Tactical mistakes, the arrival of Prussian reinforcements, weather, which we're having, it says rain and mud specifically, which we actually love right now in Toronto. It's not snowing. The equality of the opposing armies, and apparently Napoleon had hemorrhoids. So never good. So there you go. Note these. So just a note, these are screenshots from the developer API. So if people have been using it, there's a different interface, but this is like, it's a bit more like knobs and stuff you can tweak to change your answers you get back. It looks like this. So I've got a few more screenshots during, so it'll just be aware. One of my friends I used to work with, his name is Alexei. He has I was talking to him about it this is before I showed him my app, right? So he didn't send me this before, but I was like, AI is kind of neat. And he says, I think it's good at generating exactly the kind of text nobody really wants to read, especially if they know a computer wrote it. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. I think that when you see articles that an AI wrote, they're often very bland. And I think it's kind of this thing, like it knows what people have written before, but it's often not coming up with novel concepts. So I think it's a bit more complicated. I think what's more true is that it's good at knowing about things that have been written down at least once. So I'm not an AI skeptic. I would say I'm very neutral, but I'm also fascinated. I think it's a really interesting topic. If you're interested, there's a good article I read. It was about GPT 60 lines of NumPy. It's like the beginning, it sort of explains how the software works in pretty plain language, and then the rest, only the first half of the article, and then you have to build a Python project after that, so you can just skip it. And then there's Ezra Klein show, skeptical take on the AI revolution. They kind of talk about how it works and where it might fall short. But we're not here to talk about that. This is about free filing for folks. So let's talk about tax filing. So in Canada, we have free tax clinics. I didn't know this for years, but I do now. For anyone who doesn't know, the CRA administers a program called Community Volunteer Income Tax Program, or Civic for short. They call it CVIPT because the acronym sucks. Basically, the idea is that if you make under 35,000 or less in annual income and you have a simple tax situation, you can have your taxes filed for you for free by a volunteer. You need to make an appointment. You can do them in person or virtually. Virtual is new. It wasn't the case in 2019. And then you bring in your T4, T5, and then you sit beside a volunteer, and then they'll file your taxes for you. CVITP is a great program. It helps a lot of people. The simple tax situation I want to explain quickly. So it's simple, LOL, it's a little complicated, but on this page, you can find it. You have to scroll down and open a box. It's like the only place I can find on this here website. Basically, you're simple if you're in the top half and not in the bottom half. So T4 income, pension, benefits, RSP, being a student, investment income under 1,000, simple tax. Once you're self-employed, business income, rental income if you're a landlord, capital gains, if you own foreign property, go figure, or investment income over 1,000, that is a complex tax scenario. Simple tax situation does not rely on income. That's CVITP program, but you can have $250,000 of income, as far as I understand, and still be in a civil tax situation as long as you're not doing, like most people would not do this, but it could happen. It's also never really explained on the CRA website. You got to search for it, but there you go. So these are the simplest to self-file for if you're in a simple tax scenario. There's minimal weirdness, and it's the one that the online tax filing products are really good at helping kind of walk you through. So back to the free tax clinics. I worked on a project in 2019 where we did some research on low-income tax filing. As part of that, we want to observe what happens in the CVITP. This is the magic of these clinics. People come in completely confused, knowing nothing about taxes and feeling like they can't possibly do this. And 10 minutes later, they leave and their taxes are done. What happens is they sit down across from someone, the volunteer asks them questions about themselves, they read their T4, they enter the data, and they print off a confirmation and say, this is your return, this is when you should expect it, thanks for coming. So people leave, it's all finished. So people don't often, so a takeaway for me, so people often don't know how taxes work, but they do know about their own lives. So if you say, you pay rent, you have kids, like people can answer that. People don't always trust the computer, but they do trust other people. So there's really this fear that like doing it yourself, putting it in a computer, you lose control over it, or you might put something in the wrong box. It's a very box-driven exercise, tax filing. But they do trust talking to someone who does it for them, even if they don't know it, right? So if you want to read through the research, we did some, this is at CDS, the Canadian Digital Service. It's like open source, and it sort of talks about what we found. But that's all you need to know for now. So proof of concepting for TaxGPT. So my aim really was to try and recapture that magic, right, in an online service. Is there a way to replicate the conversational back and forth that people go through, that they go from, I don't know how to do this, to like, hey, I can do it, or it's finished. So I started a pretty blank slate, seeing if I could have that conversation myself. So the API is pretty similar. Again, what I said before, you write what you want, press submit, see what comes back. So can I file taxes online in Canada? This is what it looks like to use. And then you hit send, submit, and it will kind of, that's the answer. So first sentence, yes, you can file your taxes online in Canada using Canada Revenue, Net File Service, or through a certified tax office. Great. It's kind of like Smarter Child. It's like more like this, but a little bit smarter. So I started with something pretty fundamental, the basic personal amount. So in Canada, the basic personal amount is the income limit, which if you're below it, you don't owe taxes. You are not, and you're also not obligated to file. Most people are unaware, but you should file. So don't go telling people really, because if you are below the basic personal amount, if you file, you will get money back for like benefits, climate action, whatever. Like everyone should file really, especially if you're below. But technically you don't have to. So if you don't do it, they like, it's like whatever, they don't come after you or do anything. So in Canada, we pay federal taxes and provincial. So there's probably more, but for this, there's federal basic personal amount and provincial. So these are made up numbers, but if the federal one is 1,500, the Ontario one is 1,200. If I made 1,300 income, I owe Ontario taxes for the 1,000 that goes over. If I made $10,000 income, I don't owe any taxes at all in Canada. Unless you're over 65, then all the numbers change. Okay, anyway, let's see. So this is me trying, like, tell me my basic personal amount. So I live in Ontario, tell me my personal amount. It says, for 2020 tax year, it's 13,229. It's like, okay, great. Let's try that again. Tell me my amount for 2022 tax year. And then it says, okay, for 2021, it's 13,808. And nobody knows what's going to be. Like, okay, so that's wrong, right? That's not correct. So let's whip over. I'm going to briefly click this. Oh no, can you see? Okay, this is like almost the worst thing I found on Siri website. Siri is a good department. They provide a great service, but this page, geez Louise. Okay, so what is my basic personal amount? Well, the number I see is this, but it's not the 2023 filing year. It's 2022, so it's the wrong number. So, oh, it's probably here. What is the basic personal amount? So this is a dictionary definition of what that would be. And then if you click here, there's like a bunch of numbers, and including this, which is not correct for this year. This is the answer. So for the 2022 taxation year, it's 14,398. And then next year, it's going to be this, which it told me at the top for next year, not this. So and you can't link to this, right? Like you link to this page and then you say, go down, click number 2, it's the middle bullet. Terrible. Okay, sorry. Let me go back here. But so this is why, like, maybe it's good to have like better access to some of this data. Okay, grant. So in the provinces, it's not always easy. Sometimes they will tell you. Other times you have to open up the tax form to look it up. This is the Nova Scotia tax form, the basic personal amount. Everyone's hands up in the room telling me, so I'll just say, but it's right there, 11,481. So it gets pretty bad. Here's some more things ChatGPT is bad. So as another aside, this before kind of March, like early March, they released this chat API. This is what it's actually using. So this is equivalent to using chat like interface, right? Before that, it was this other one, which had 4 levels of smartness and it charged you different prices. But so I was kind of like, I don't want to necessarily pay the expensive one. Let me see what it gives me for the different, Da Vinci, Curry, Babbage, Ada. I think they're named after the Ninja Turtles, who knows? It's a mystery, they don't say, I'm just kidding. So 4 tiers, starting with Da Vinci. And so I'm asking questions. This is the one I started with. Okay, I live in Ontario. I made $60,000 last year. How much approximately will I pay in taxes? Based on your income, you will pay approximately $8,851. So that's not a bad tax rate, but it's also not correct. So we're gonna skip over all the logic of how we got there because it's not actually true. This is the one a little further down. Your tax will be $8,600. So $200 off, pretty good answer, but also wrong. Babbage, in Canada, the cost of goods sold is taxed at a flat rate of 20,000. What? This means the total cost of goods sold will be 60,000. 20 times 60,000. What? To have taxable income, the individual will have to pay tax on this amount, which is 3880. Okay, like what is going on here, right? This kind of just generating garbage at this point. So let's try the other one, right? Okay, this one's amazing. You have to calculate your taxes, and sure enough, 60,000 divided by 4 years, what will be 68,000? Excuse me. You have to pay Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, and Ontario Taxation Authority. First time I've heard of them. 6664,4. Ultimate value of your income will be, we're actually up. You got $8,000 more at the end of that. So, wow. Okay. Let's do another one. This is funny. So early on, I was sharing with friends, and I got this screenshot back from a friend who was trying it out. She's the orange, and before I came up with the maple leaf, I was using this little beaver icon. So the question was, do beavers pay taxes? And then it didn't answer. It just says thanks. Okay, is there anything else? So then I was like, well, do beavers pay taxes? People want to know, right? So this is a smart one. No taxes. Then you go down. There's no definitive answer to this question as tax laws vary. However, it is generally accepted that beavers do pay taxes. So a lot of equivocating, but we finally get the answer. Keep going further down. Yes, in the state of Oregon, absolutely, we're charging the beavers. And then again, Ada, like this is the cheap one. So if you want to have the cheap service, this is what you're getting. No definitive answer. However, in Oregon, again, so there's something going on in Oregon with beavers. I don't know. Washington and Colorado are typically considered taxable income. Not quite grammatically correct, but more importantly, wrong. So this is like when I kind of moved away from this idea. So the tax part of TaxGPT. So eventually I realized I keep trying to feed it prompts to give me the right answer, but I already know the right answer, right? your basic personal amount is 14,400, and in Ontario it's 11,141, unless you're so that's the part I scripted, and then I just kept going. And so this is my big quiz. Like, this is what you go through, and you start asking about, like, what are my best options for tax filing. So it did get a little complicated, but that's not GPT. That's like, this is good info that is real, and like everything that's in here is like trustworthy. So it's basically about quadrants. So anyone ever heard of Gartner? They love quadrants. High income, no income, and then complex, simple. So anyone below basic personal amount, not that complex. They don't have to file, but we don't want to mention it. So we're just ignoring them. People who have simple and low enough income are eligible for the community volunteer program. So those are the people we want to recommend for that. And then anyone who has simple at all is a good candidate for self-help. And anyone over here, maybe it's time to see a pro, right? Maybe talk to an expert. In fact, everyone can self-file. It doesn't matter if you're complex. It's just like the tool is really aimed at people who have low confidence or not that familiar. And so like, we don't really want to, we just want to say to the people who are simple, like, it should be easy for you. And for the other folks, like, maybe it's time to go talk to someone. So that's the idea there. That's what the flowchart tries to do. If you're eligible for CVIPP, consider using it. It's free, white glove service. Someone does it for you. People who are not eligible, but have a simple tax scenario, so over the limit, you should at least try it. You know, you're the easiest use case, see how far you get. Anyone else? I mean, do it if you're comfortable, and if not, go see a tax pro, but it's not, as I said, not really the target audience. And I also have a suspicion that people who run their own business, or landlords, have foreign property, are just a little bit more aware that they might have a complex tax scenario and are probably not like, what do I do? You know, I need an AI. So that's the tax part. What about the GPT part? So I've gone back and forth on this, but I think I have a pretty good answer now. So early on, my girlfriend asked this. I have a couple of investments I've received dividends from, and I was issued a T5. Do I need an accountant to handle that, or can I still file directly online for free? And it wasn't hooked up to anything, so no answer comes back. But I thought that was a pretty good question, so I kept it for later. Yeah, so I just would use the question later. So then one day I did hook it up, and that's what I entered. And it gives me back, as a Canadian resident, you can file your taxes for free online using the government's free software like TurboTax or SimpleTax. If you have received any income, you must report it. Since you have a T5, all the information required, it should be available. If you're comfortable filing online and have a good understanding of how to report, you should be able to file on your own without an accountant. And I was like, wow, that's a good answer to that question. So this is something I read early February. There's an article that came out in late January about a Wharton MBA prof who tried some exam questions on his ChatGPT. That's the passes exam. Okay, great. So he said it probably would pass his exam. And there's a white paper. It's very short. It's also very amusing. It's really well written. And he has this line at the end. He says, so he talks about the questions he asked and the answers he got back. But then at the end, he sort of reflected. The moment I saw the answer to my first question, I fell in love with ChatGPT. I'd used other natural language processing and AI before. The simple user experience and the great answer put me in a state of awe. Now, the section in which this appears is titled, "Be mindful of what it can and cannot do." So it's not just saying like, it's amazing. He's like caveats this. But I think there's something real here about creating simple user experiences around complex subject matter, how that can be beneficial, especially in an area like tax filing where people are intimidated by the subject. And also, if you look for your basic person, that's pretty hard. I know it's just an algorithm, but TaxGPT is legitimately friendly, encouraging, enthusiastic, and it's usually right. So I don't have to worry about being stupid for asking questions, or that I will get answers I can't understand, or that I need to have an economics degree to use it. It's just like, you can try it out. You can just ask really, really basic questions, and like, generally they're pretty good. In particular, it's good at giving questions. It's good at answering questions like the T5 one, giving overviews, explanations, somewhere to get started. So it's a way to begin to understand your tax. That's kind of how I think about it. It's definitely not good at knowing exact amounts or calculating your amount payable. Like if you ask for specific dates, specific amounts, basically doesn't know. The main thing is that its knowledge cutoff is 2021. So that's why it says 2022, we don't. So don't ask for any like, hey, what are my tax filing obligations for 2022? Not a good question. At this point, the best tax software is a big calculator like Excel, where you plug numbers in, you run formulas, you always get the right answer. You don't want to replace your calculator with a magic 8-ball, even if it's pretty good magic 8-ball. So absolutely do not pay money to someone using AI to do your taxes. The best case scenario is getting the same output, but like replacing the like simple tax code with some like random AI stuff that no one knows what's going on in there. But the best possible outcome is the same result. So like, it's not a good fit. So that's why I framed it as an advisor, not an assistant. Gives you advice on where to file and how, but doesn't assist you in completing a return. That's between you and Wealthsimple Tax. So that's it. TaxGPT, free filing, and helps you learn about taxes in a friendly and approachable way. Doesn't file for you, but it can make it easier to get started. And this is my last slide. So there's the link, and then there's my. If you want to retweet my thing because I only have 10 likes on it, and then there's my emails. If you want to complain, you can also use Twitter, but I prefer it in the email. To be honest.
It's got a better answer about beavers.
Okay. And it's upgraded its Beaver engine, so it's Beaver prediction tax paying engine. So we're now everyone can go ask that. But yeah, so that's the presentation.
Thank you, Paul. And now we know why the Americans are always going on about Canada being a tax haven for beavers. So we're going to go on to the Q&A now, and good. Yeah. Okay, we'll just get set up for that. And in the meantime, if you're at home, drop a Q in the chat.
Yeah,
choose this one. Okay, yeah.
Is that also the speaker though?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Okay. Okay, we'll see how this goes. Cool. So Gabe,
we do have one question online. It's from M.
TV, just give us 1 second.
Are you ready for a question from online? Yeah. Okay, great. M, you're up.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for the talk. So you broke down that there are different ways you can call the API that cost different amounts. Which one is powering TaxGPT?
So for comedic effect, I was showing the different. I forget what they call their completion engine. I don't know what they call it, but the chat interface you would see if you use ChatGPT. They released an API while I was building it that hooks into something. It seems very equivalent to me, like very similar to that one. It's called GPT-3.5-Turbo. So it doesn't use the DaVinci, Babbage, blah, blah, blah. It's using that one. And one of my main concerns was DaVinci is 2 cents per 1,000 words. So that's question and answer. So if you're like, beavers pay taxes, like that's 5 words. And then the answer comes back as 100. So that's 105. But their ChatGPT Turbo, like the new API they have is 1/10 of that. So it's now 0 point whatever. It's like, I guess per 1,000 words, it costs 5. Oh my God. It's 5,000 words for 1 cent, right? So it's using the chat API now, and it's not using the other ones. But I was using those others during testing, and it surprised me how quickly the quality deteriorated. Yeah.
Yeah, do we have another question, Gabe?
No, that's it online for now.
Okay, we'll take questions from the room. Hands?
So this is me like not knowing anything about ChatGPT, but is there an opportunity to have this like also translate some of that content into other languages?
My understanding, is it fine to just?
Oh, yeah.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, my understanding in short version is yes. The longer version is it's about how much you want to pay for it. So ChatGPT is sort of trained over the internet writ large. Like we don't know exactly what, but most like it's read the CRA page at some point before 2022. There's this idea of like, what if I have a custom amount of data that I wanted to know? How do I get it to know those things so it can return those answers? And you can use fine tuning, which is sending in your own data. It does translate. Basically, if you ask like the same answer and say return the answer in French, it can say yes. If you want more granular, like custom content, like we have this thing we need you to read and then translate to other languages, I think you'd have to sort of pay to get it to first understand that and then to return it back to you. But I do not know about the quality of the translations if they're like actually good.
Yeah, I guess so. Kind of like a two-parter. One, have you tried asking questions about like specific sort of like tax scenarios where maybe not so ingrained, but like, oh, would I qualify for Ontario like energy tax benefit? And two, does it work in other provinces as well, or is it mostly just like based in Ontario ones?
Yeah, I absolutely. So definitely, this is the like here be dragons part, right? When you start saying like, once you start drilling in, it gives you a good general overview, and then it often hedges. So you will say like, okay, am I eligible for X? And it would be like, you're eligible for this and this. It's probably right. And then if you're like, and am I eligible for X? It kind of, the more detail you give it, the less it knows. But then it always kind of throws you out, as in like, gives you the, here's what I think, but you should talk to a tax professional. So I think it does a pretty good job of giving an overview and then kind of couching its recommendation in, if you're not sure, please do this. And as you move through the interface as well, I also like bold. This is not legal advice. Like you gotta, if there's something you're not sure about, you should really talk to someone. So that's that question. What was the first one? The second one?
Oh, just other provinces as well.
Yeah, it works for, well, it's mainly if you are in like either below personal amount or eligible for CVITP, it will tell you about benefits, but only federal benefits are applied to. It does know about the amounts. That's like when it asks you at the beginning what province, it will say like you're above or below this amount, and then it will say, okay, like here's some benefits that you really should apply, and then you'll get them. And actually, this, to just expand upon that idea, this was something that we saw at the tax clinics. People are not obligated to file. They really should. Everyone says you should. It's like a good idea. But people who had not filed in the past would come in sometimes and have the impression that they are actually like they did something wrong and they're in trouble. And it's not actually true. And basically, if you file now, you'll get some money, but there's like almost a fear, like I haven't filed for 3 years, so I'm obviously did something wrong. And if they won't notice me, but then once I file, suddenly my name will pop up and they will penalize me, right? So I'm better off not filing ever. And so yeah, it's like I really want to encourage people to file if they go into that flow and just be like, it's okay, you should do it. So yeah, it does ask about provinces. It talks about the personal amount, and then it's like in an earlier iteration, I said you don't need to file, and I mailed it to some of the tax clinics, and I got a few people responding being like, do not mention it. So I've changed the language to say you don't owe taxes, which is true, but you should still file, and then you'll receive benefits.
All right, I think we have time for a question online.
Yeah, we got 2 questions, but the first one's from Johnny.
Hey, Paul. Do you process the chat messages before you feed it to ChatGPT? What prompt do you use?
It's a good question. it's a little basic, but let me see. Let me get this. So yeah, so you can give a command, a system command to the API, and basically tell it like your role is to do X or to do Y or whatever, and be like, you should be really angry or you should be really sarcastic or whatever. So my prompt says, your helpful advisor answers questions about tax filing in Canada, respond in one paragraph. And then it says, if someone asks about the filing deadline, say it is May 1st, 2023, because it says April 30th, but it doesn't account for Sunday. However, if they are self-employed, so basically it says general advice, tax filing, and then I give 2 pieces of direct information, which is like the tax filing deadlines. And then also, if someone asks about the Canada dental benefit, it's for families with an annual income of less than 90,000. Parents or guardians of children under 12 years can apply through the CRA because that is a new program. TaxGPT has no idea about it. And if you ask, I guess I would say the main problem with the AI is that when it doesn't know the answer, it won't say, sorry, I don't know. It'll be like, it's this. So if you say, what is Canada dental benefit this morning? It'll be like, totally, Canada child benefit is this. And like, it just says something else, right? So, so yeah, the prompt, be friendly, tax advisor, respond in one paragraph, like don't give a huge answer. And then it also says, here's the filing deadlines. Here's what the Canada dental benefit is. That's my prompt.
Thanks.
Awesome. Paul, one more?
There's a written question. I can respond.
Yeah, I just gotta respond to the written question there in the chat.
So the question is, how do you convince people that these LLMs, so large language model, don't have any concept of what a fact is or can't do any sort of reasoning or math? I've had a lot of difficulty explaining to people what sorts of things it can be trusted to do well versus not at all. Yes, so this is, I would say, the question I expected right away of like, can you be sure that the answers you're giving are going to be right? And the answer to that is no. What I would say is it's usually right most of the time. And I have built most of the service to almost be like a flow chart that's known in advance where you always get good information. And then there's this kind of escape hatch where it's like, I just want to ask questions, or I've done the thing and now I want to ask questions. So now it's kind of unstructured knowledge. I think it's true, like you can't know, but I guess my frame of reference for this is people would come into the tax clinics. It's not everybody, but just like in my experience, people would come into these tax clinics. It's almost the feeling of like when you know you have a huge credit card bill and you're like, I'm not even gonna look. I'm not even gonna look. Like I won't think about it. Like they're almost afraid to look it up. They don't want to engage. It's like really hard for them to like make it over that, like I'm gonna learn about this and do something about it. And the volunteer sort of gives them this way out where they can do it for you, and they just ask you about where you live and your kids. So I think people who have a very low amount of information about taxes, this is probably a good entry for them. And I think that outweighs the risk of potentially giving an answer, for example, saying use Canadian government software like TurboTax or SimpleTax. It's not Canadian government software. That doesn't really matter. Like you can use it, right? So so I think it's better than essentially like, I mean, to be honest with you, like I don't want to offend anyone, but people want the convenience or have a business, that's totally fine. Like great use cases for an accountant. People who don't understand taxes, who are making very low amount of money, there's like a predatory industry. And so it's like, come in, I will take a cut of the money you owe and I'll do it for you. And that's easy. So like, that's really what I'm trying to prevent. And so I think like, where do I turn to for help? Everyone is just going to take my money. Like if I go there, this is like one option that won't do that. So there's a long-winded answer to like, is there harm in this? And I think the good outweighs the harm.